Hi. So, in this session, we're going to showcase some new features, maybe one new feature, which is not necessarily, it may not be useful to everybody, but it's a neat little feature in terms of ideas, unexpected connections between different things that we do in technology, especially as it relates to software development. I'm going to show basically how to use the idea of forking and also maybe you could say Git-style cherry picking and apply it to AI conversations within sessions. So here, when we talk about a session, it's just that it's a session that maps to a particular provider. You can create as many sessions as you want, and within the session, every conversation is part of the context that you send to an AI, right? So if we clear that up and type hi, that's part of the session, and a follow up to that, any follow up submission will be part of the same session. What the forking ability allows us to do is basically to kind of create parallel conversations within the same session. Again, it might be useful in some situations, like if you're doing something complicated, let's say you have a set of prompts that you send and you solve a problem, you can kind of save it as a fork and then be able to reach out to that same conversation within the same session. Of course, you can, like I said, you can create as many sessions, so you don't strictly need this, but it's useful. Right, so let's say, what are the states America, just to build up the context here. Okay, so Anthropic, with its habit of being presumptuous, did generate it and went ahead and saved it. I suspect it dumped it in my home directory here because the session doesn't have an actual home directory defined. Or, yeah, never mind. Just, it's possible that it errored out somewhere. But anyway, here it is. I'll have to tell it not to use a tool or not to save it. So yeah, I suspect it errored out. If I look at the logs, it will probably show what happened. Or maybe, anyway, let's ignore this for now. It errored out. So this is actually a good indication of the kind of problems we can run into. So we can solve by having parallel conversation. So this tool call is a problem because it's not complete. If I just say, can you display them? It's gonna fail because there's a tool call that's unresolved, and you're supposed to, for every tool call, you're supposed to have a response. That's basically how the models work, right? So, yeah, so it gives us this error that, you should do that. You should make sure you have a response to this first. Well, let me create a fork instead. I will run this as an automation, and we're going to use the Anthropic model, which is this session, and I would say display, or just display them. And then here, create a fork, state analysis, let's call it that, and give it a little color just to keep things fun. And now we hit save. This time around, it's gonna work because it's avoiding all the conversation that's already in the session and just using what I just sent. Right, so here's our fork of the original session. Sorry, but I have a cold. With the original session, and interestingly enough, it says I apologize, but I don't know what you're talking about because it's not seeing any of the conversations prior to this. So let's continue here and say, this time around, since we created choose the right profile here, the right. Since we've created a fork, it'll be listed here, state analysis, so we can join the fork. Now let's say list states of America. Just display, don't save. Right. Alright, so it's gonna go to the same session as before, but we're using this fork, right? So things will continue to work, even though our main session is actually broken because of that unresolved tool call. This would work just fine because we're in a parallel conversation, and you can create as many parallel conversations that you want. So there it is. Now let's run another prompt just onto the main session, just to demonstrate that if I don't fork or join a fork, that error that we had before will be there. Right, so choose Anthropic here as a session, but this time around we're not going to create a fork or join a fork. And I should see that error that came up earlier about a tool call not be resolved. Okay, so here tells us that a tool call must be succeeded by a tool call response. So neat little feature. Again, you fork off a conversation and then join a fork. There is in Java concurrency, there is a concept as that as well. Or you can think of it, you can actually pick conversations here. Let's choose this one, and right, so we have selected context here, it's selected that one, and we can build off of it. We can build off of it into another session, into another profile, actually, another session. Right, so let's say the default, which is AWS, OpenAI. So let's, haven't picked a conversation from the Anthropic, but we're gonna move it. Let me open up the OpenAI session. Okay, we'll clean this up just for the sake of. Okay, so we're gonna pick from the Anthropic. We picked this here, and this time we'll use the OpenAI profile. profile, a session, to say show display or list the ones on the eastern coast. Did I spell coast? I hope so. And this time around, we just dump it into the main OpenAI session. Right? Run that. It tells us where it's running this. So this particular operation of choosing a particular conversation, I think of it kind of like a Git cherry pick, in terms of conceptually. Here we have a conversation. We picked it up. We have it here, and we added to it, and then it did what we asked. Basically, just pick that one up, continued it onto a different session. So you can move this around between sessions, and it worked just fine. This can be useful, if you're running some ideas between models. You want to try out different concepts. This gives you a nice way, an easy way of doing it, where you can port conversations between them. You can fork a conversation off of a session. You can create as many parallel conversations that you want. Thank you very much.